The thing I want to start with is there's so many exhibitions in Manhattan right now. I have to say this is among the best times to see exhibitions in New York, both now and in June. So I kept knocking down how many shows we're seeing, but let me tell you what I'm doing. I want to show you what I think are great exhibitions by superstars and not so well known. We're going to see de Kooning show, which is breathtaking, but we're seeing somebody, the first show we're seeing today is a show that I love, and it's by an artist and a group that uses non-traditional surfaces to make their paintings. A painting is something that's on the wall. It's really also weaving. And I want to explain to you that weaving has become just as high art as painting. And I want, somebody asked me recently, are there certain galleries for weaving or certain galleries for ceramics? All the major galleries now understand that art is art. So let's start with the first video. 2 videos, then we'll see the show.
One moment, sorry, I'm just gonna get the share screen. Okay.
Hi, I'm here at the Armory Show and I'm standing at Cecilia Brunson Projects' booth. They brought to the fair one of the standouts of the Venice Biennale, the artist Claudia Alarcón, who is from the La Puntana community in Argentina. She frequently works with the Silat Collective, and together they weave these really amazing fiber works using the Jaguar plant. In these works, they translate dreams told to them by the elders of their community. These dreams warn of how nature will be reshaped by humanity, and so the artists are translating some of those dreams, but not so literally. So you'll see abstracted mountains, clouds, landscape elements, but none of it is going to look exactly like reality. It kind of represented more as just abstract shapes. And in that way, and because the textiles hang a bit loose, they resemble modernist abstraction by Lenore Tawney, Annie Albers, and many others. Follow Art News for more.
Toby, should I move to the second video?
Right away.
Sorry.
We're not going to see both.
Bueno, empezamos. Otlamesta o ihipahna weta wenna yekia o ise tahlameta hapeta otlames opatsin o yensi tahtsota mateta o wuhian otlames hap otumet tahna tawatsin hai otumet na otlames wet hapta taseata nampamaita wikita tamai anteta o wenta yensi.
We're not going to see the whole video, but I find this riveting. 5 minutes.
Neta otalo en 12 años vi tenía abuelita. Neta que oyen fikutsa. Yo patin. Mi abuela me daba. Oyen si wet o patin. Yo patin talak la tala là hà nước ta là tạ hiến là nước ta là tạ hiến là warm về là quên ta là ép về hấp tạc to tại chủ bạn nói về ta là tạo thay lắc về xí về nông trabajan con chào hoy antipio la opin talle no homen tạo hiến về thôn là chỉ ấp ở hiến ai biết sẽ là ôn là nó dejo tạo hiến ở homen tạo chum về ôn đun xí về ôn non về ôn tạp phá về ấp ở hiến lấy tao bắt xí về ấp ở hiến thì gì cả Manehna tạo samit oyen si Wet jutsan ta oyen si Opatsin jehen apakta Wakas ta oyen si Wet apnaya tatiyaho ta oyen si Utsah ta oyen si wet ohomen chechik Nayahen ta oyen wet ta opon wet ta wet neche ta oyen si opak Wet neche hatta wawusa makta oyen si Hatta sota osames oyen chume ta wet matya ta osames ohumin
Okay, we're going to stop right here. We're not going to see them dyeing it, but I want to talk to you now for a minute. So this to me, before we see the show, we're going to stop right here. I'm going to talk to you for a minute. I'm sorry, but I want to explain something to you. I started the day today because I am fascinated by the fact that our culture is changing. And we now understand that art can be all different types of art. It's not only by white men. And I think that is very, even though I am a man and I happen to be white, but I really think of myself as a Jewish man, not as a white man. But, and I don't believe in gender either. But this artist is Argentinian, and they're comparing this work to Lenore Tawney, who was either the friend or lover of Agnes Martin, and Amy Albers, who was the wife of Joseph Albers, who changed the way we think about color theory. And I'm so proud to show you a video that's not about, it's about how you think about making art. So I spent 4 minutes or 5 minutes, and that's a lot of my time for my hour and 15 minutes. I wanted you to understand that the way art is made is riveting. And we're going to see another artist today who uses a loom to make his parts of his canvas. So I just want you to say we're living in a very exciting time where how art is made is just as important as the art itself. And this is with a collective. Now, if you know Elena Tsui, and Sherelle will put Elena Tsui in there to, not to show them now, but they'll look at Elena Tsui also works with many people who actually do the work with him. And if you think about somebody like Van Dyck had a staff also, or Bierstadt. There are many artists who have a huge staff that work with them. It's not how I want to work, but I don't disrespect an artist who does that. So now we can look at the work. I wanted you to have all that in your mind as we look at it. I love this work, and you can see all this is made out of that yucca material, and it's all weaving. Now, the only thing I don't like about the show, and I usually don't do this, is the way it's framed. In the show, it's a teeny bit disappointing. They have to put it behind glass, but I wish there was no frame because I find the frame somewhat distracting. But look at it. Yes, does it remind me of Paul Klee and Kandinsky? I agree with myself. I'd love to hear who you think it looks like. But the work is so poetic and so beautiful. And the fact that these are women who know nothing about art, who are working with a great artist who's helping them make a living. Now, somebody will say to me, well, how much do they get paid an hour? You have to understand, these women, if they get like 10 cents an hour, they're doing look at that. These are gorgeous pieces of art. I wish you could see them up front, and they're all about dreams and meditations. So she, as the artist, is working with the collective to do what she wants. Now, Lisa Liu, I've talked to you about her in the past. We saw she did the very, very famous piece called The Kitchen. Eliza Liu. It's Liza, not Lisa. Eliza Liu. And she did that famous kitchen that's in the Whitney collection. So when you look at these women, you see they're so excited that to them, it's like cooking. They're learning how to see how to make a piece of art. I feel like there's a beautiful saying, you don't give a poor person money, you give them a goat so they can have milk. And I feel what they're doing for these artists is truly an amazing thing. I'm really dying to know. So put it in the chat if you find the work beautiful. I honestly find the work beautiful. I just dislike the framing. Let's keep going for the rest of them.
Toby, there's just a question what country these women are from.
Argentina.
Thank you. And for those of you who are asking where they're shown, we'll send the list of galleries in the follow-up
Yes,
email.
it's a James Cohen gallery. But they show in any gallery.
So
let's look at the relation, because I like you seeing the scale. Now, if anyone buys one, please call me, and I want to help you reframe them, because I mind the way they're framed. I think I made one sale during the exhibition,
and I'm trying to convince them. I'll show you what I'm trying to convince them to do. I think they're distracting with the way they're framed. But now you can see the scale. Oh, I'm so happy you wrote the, thank you, Faith. I love that you said it's exquisite. I was so blown away by it. It's very hard for me to pick the first show I want to show you guys, but this had to be the first show. And I want to see the handbag. Can we see the handbag installation? I think that's on the wall. Keep going. Unless they don't have that on here. I thought they did. Yeah, there it is. Now, this is a conversation on itself. One of the people, you know, that I advise collectors, you know, what to get in. One of them said to me, what do you think if we could find a way to buy one or two of the bags? And I say, nah, it's not about that. This is the installation. And this reminded me a lot of Ellen Atsui, because there's something very beautiful about taking, as a rule, these handbags would be one piece, but looking at it as a wall installation, to me, it's breathtaking. And it looks like it's almost the shape of an eye. And if you look carefully, you'll see there's an eye in the third from the top row. A little far, no, not there, over Sherelle. There's an eye there it is. I love this so much. And I love that they painted the wall so that it becomes one holistic piece. I know we have to go quickly because I have a lot of shows I want to see. So that's show number one.
Toby, there's just a question about this show. If the artist gives them the designs, or in what way does she work with them?
It's her designs. It's her designs that she works with the elders. They tell their dreams and she interprets them.
Thank you. So are we?
Thank you for asking. Never be shy. Always ask me. There's never such a thing as a stupid question. I love, that's why I don't like doing this alone without Sherelle. I want the questions. It makes me happier. Now, I put this show right after the last show, even though they're at the same gallery, different buildings, but I like seeing somebody who comes from an art background. Now we're going to see this show. We can't hear, Sherelle.
Look to the next generation of emerging artists. One making a name for themselves is Kennedy Yanko, artist in residence at the Rubel Museum. And as we saw for ourselves, the work is larger than life. An artist's studio is akin to one's home. It's private, intimate, and there's always house rules. Sculptor Kennedy Yanko let our cameras into her Brooklyn studio under the condition we didn't share any of her secrets. I'm just trying to figure out how you connected it all. It's so cool.
Good luck. Good luck. That's what I just figured out this year.
What?
That's what
You're not going to tell me?
No way.
Her craft has evolved through her desire to marry paint with metal.
I'm really interested in challenging perception. When you look at it, you don't know if it's light or heavy or soft or hard. And as soon as you understand it, then your whole mind is flipped upside down on its head.
What makes it unique?
The process, I think. For me, so much of what I'm doing it's really responsive.
A process that requires all of her strength and patience. Does it always come out the way you expect?
Never.
I was sitting here
I was
looking
expecting something totally different for this piece.
Really? What were you expecting?
Well, I mean, it was supposed to go in this way and go around and then work this way.
Born in St. Louis, Missouri, Yanko grew up in a loving home with family who always supported her creativity. Her father took her to art classes at a young age.
That was how he and I connected in a lot of ways. He's a painter and a colorist, and that was always just a conversation we would both light up about.
Early in her process, Yanko figured out how to take paint off of canvas and turn it into a three-dimensional material, a paint skin.
This piece was, after I first started working with skins, I started using this rubber, and I would take the rubber, I would roll it out, and then I would throw the paint in the air. So the paint would atom bomb, and then I would take my body underneath the rubber, and I'd kind of expand on the way that the fractal details interacted with itself.
She left home at the age of 18, first to attend the San Francisco Art Institute, then to participate in the Living Theater in New York City.
They would have writers and actors and painters and all different minds come together in this space where we could all interact and talk in different ways. And that's where I started to learn about philosophy and psychology and what it means as an artist to conjure emotion within and to have it come out, and that it has to come from here first.
Her curiosity led her to an apprenticeship in metal welding and the skill set she needed for her next chapter.
People look at metal as a man-made industrial material. When I recontextualize it visually or in my mind, there's a sense of imbuing it with life, just through what I'm thinking.
Last year during the pandemic, Yanko became the first sculptor to ever earn a residency at the Rubel Museum. Don and Mara Rubel own one of the largest contemporary art collections in the world. What did you see in her?
Oh my God! First
Magic.
of all, magic.
We
Power.
literally saw one piece, and it was just so moving, and you felt the power, you felt the beauty, being able to take ordinary, ugly objects and make them beautiful. And you also felt something which you almost never feel, the ability to make a gigantic sculpture.
The opportunity gave her the tools and space she needed to begin creating the work she dreamed of.
I used over 100 gallons of paint for the skins there because I had a room where I could do my skins, do 40 feet of skins. It was life altering for me because this is a material that I worked with for 12 years, and I'm just now beginning to really understand it.
This is the result. It's called white passing.
I think making this work was a self-analysis. It is about a kind of skin, what it means to shed skin, what it means to change colors of skin.
My work is always pulled into conversations around gender and sexuality and identity, and I haven't addressed my racial existence before.
Until she started writing the graphic novel, Indelible Fluidity.
When I first started writing it, I had to look at my face, and I had to look at my skin and my body in a way that I was never forced to do before. And I really had to understand what my existence and what my contribution to the world is as an artist.
Okay, we'll
and as a
stop right
person.
there. Stop right there.
You can't make serious.
That's Leonardo Drew, by the way. He is one of the artists that I've shown you in the past. And he is one of her mentors. But I want to get to the show, and somebody brought up John Chamberlain, and I want to say, yes, it's because it's metal, but that's about as close as it gets. But the reason I'm so fascinated by her work is that she's playing with materials that are so beautiful, and she mixes paint as skin and metal. So let's go to look at the images. The installation shots first. Or here they are. So when you look at it, you begin to realize that I love this little piece here. She says in the video, which you'll watch on your own later, I just don't have enough time to show you everything, that one day she wants to do sculptures as large as buildings. But her intimate pieces are just, I love this one too again. It almost looks like it could be an animal, it could be a musical instrument. It has such beauty and power, and I like the way, which Chamberlain doesn't do, is she crushes the metal like Chamberlain, but she puts in that material that looks like it sits there and it almost looks like it's breathing. I also like that that's the only piece in the show I don't like. I have to admit, you know, people always say to me, did you love the whole show? This piece I don't relate to as well, because I don't think it evolved. Go back to that for a minute, Sherelle, because it doesn't integrate as well as everything else she does. You see the skin or the fabric going in and out, and it looks like it's just like part of a wheel in a huge truck. And I feel she hasn't manipulated it enough for me. I'm only one person. If you like it, I'm still your friend. Let's go to the next one. Again, I love that so much. It looks, now you're going to laugh when I say this, but it makes me think of, and Sherelle, write this down, of early David Smith work when he would use tools and use those tools and make them into something. Another great artist who I love is Mel Edwards. And I think she looked at him a lot. Mel Edwards was a very good friend of my close friend, Jack Whitten. So I've been seeing Mel Edwards work for 50 years. I think this is another piece, just so poetic. You can feel the music in the work. And I like the way she sometimes uses white material. This is the one that reminds me most of John Chamberlain, but that front piece is paint, and it also looks like fabric, and it looks like many of the expressionistic artists. And that again reminds me a lot of Chamberlain, but it's just, and that now you can see it in scale. It's a beautiful show. It's so beautiful. And the lighting, they painted the walls for the show. The walls are not usually this color, and I think that was very smart. Also, the fact that the Rubels, she was the first artist that they gave a space to, I think is a big, big thing. All right, now we'll get to the next show. I know we're going quickly, but I just want you to see a lot of information. I'm happy that you guys, now this is an artist who's the least well-known of all the artists I'm showing you today, but I wanted you to see some artists who are not as well-known.
Mi trabajo surge de un vínculo paradójico entre la arquitectura, que es un lenguaje de la construcción por excelencia, con la destrucción y la dislocación. Podría decir que es un acto tanto de consternación como de esperanza. El desplazamiento, la fisura, la incertidumbre, la repetición son todas constantes de mi obra, que busca de alguna manera unir lo fortuito y el cálculo preciso. Todo en un fragmento de una estructura, de una casa que a veces es mi propia casa de la infancia y otras veces son casas con ecos modernistas. Un mínimo fragmento de una estructura que active de alguna manera percepciones de fragilidad física por un lado y de fracaso ideológico por otro. No me refiero al fracaso político específico. Yo sigo siendo una humanista. Pero para mi generación hay toda una cosa que estaba incluida en el proyecto modernista y que incluía también el proyecto político, que de alguna manera se fue deshaciendo. Hace poco leí a alguien que estaba comentando un libro de otro, pero me quedó una frase en la cabeza. Digo, aunque no la sé literalmente, la frase decía algo así como que era más fácil imaginar el fin del mundo que el fin de la modernidad. Y yo siento que un poco ahí estamos, teniendo que imaginar el fin de la modernidad para poder salvar el mundo. Bueno, volviendo a la obra, yo trato de rescatar o de no menoscabar, en todo caso, cierta elegancia, cierta belleza, porque la obra apunta tanto a un rescate poético en el medio del desastre, en medio de la debacle, como a connotar también esa perversidad que hay en la fricción entre representar con cierta belleza y un contenido desastroso. Abordar el espacio devastado con la semántica de la construcción es un intento de crear alguna presencia que...
So first of all, I want you to understand that yes, reminiscent Deepen Corn, Richard Tuttle, and Jennifer Stockholder, but there's something so beautiful and poetic about the work. Now, I'm sure you understand that because many of you have been with me for a long time. To me, I find doing these lectures like cooking. I try to make sure the side dishes and the main meal all fit well together, and I'm trying to show you something that I find interesting. And today's lecture was really about how artists use material in such different ways. And I don't know if I would have picked this show had all the other shows not been there. This is the show that is the least well-known artist, but I look at the surfaces and they're just breathtakingly beautiful. And she's looking at what ruins means. And in the show, she put cactuses. This is the second exhibition. Let me see what you said. Unfortunately, this is the second exhibition. That the endings this last week. I know I can't help it. Every show is up, but I can't. I'm picking the best shows, and I'm sorry that it's only for another week. But I don't know what to do. I'm picking the best shows because most people are in California and wouldn't be here anyway. But if everyone decides that you want me to pick shows that are up for more than 3 weeks, I'll do that too. But a few of the shows end on May 10th, but some end on June 14th. But look at the work, and you can see that it looks like fragments of buildings. And I also love the texture of the surface. It's just very beautiful, and some of them are very large. And in the show, on the floor, there are 2 cactuses there. And she paints some of the cactuses in the paintings, and some of them are just on the floor. But I love the fact that she's an older woman, and I love that she's not that well known. And I'd be honest with you, it's not a big gallery. The odds of you seeing it, there's the cactus. You see them on the floor. If I hadn't put this in, it's not even being picked as one of the best shows up right now. So I try and do that as well to show you things that you wouldn't ordinarily see. And if you like the work, you go online and you find more of the work. In my mind, and Sherelle, we better find out what are the numbers. If there are 96 people here or 91 people here, what percentage is in Orange County? I'm not counting on that. It's going to be up for another 3 weeks. All right, let's go to the next exhibition. This is another one. Now, this to me is so fascinating when you hear this. it looks like a painting. It is technically a painting, but it's done on a loom. So let's look at that.
It's hard to explain to anyone that you're an artist and have them really understand it. Especially if you were to say you're a weaver, there's another kind of level of confusion. So I generally just say I'm a painter and leave it at that. I didn't think I would be weaving this long, actually. I thought I would always go back to painting. And most recently, the colors have surprised me. I was using all sort of neutral tones in the beginning and mimicking the canvas in a more literal way. So the kind of setting free of the colors has been something has surprised me. I started as a painter, and then I was dyeing the canvas, so using the canvas as a tactile material to work with instead of on, and really working the material with my hands, which led me to wanting to go a step further and make the canvas myself. So in the beginning, I wanted to take away the kind of barrier that paint presented, the kind of physical barrier, no matter how small it was, presented by like a layer of paint. So I wanted to make a painting out of color, but I didn't want to use the paint. So I felt like that was something that could be explored in the realm of painting. So that was sort of my starting point. 2 floor looms, 4 harness, and they've slowly, we say they've gotten militarized. They've slowly sort of lost a lot of their original parts and gotten more kind of heavy duty, like straps and metal pieces. And so just the canvas, just the stretcher, no paint, just the frame, just the bare parts. The work has been shown in the States, Japan, Korea, Switzerland, Italy, England, Germany, Belgium. I think art is a way of being honest, and art can be a way of living or being alive or staying alive. For early art makers, art was a way of affirming that you're human and a part of this world. And the viewer is then also affirmed from just the act of viewing the art. I think artists are always trying to get somewhere, or not to prove something, but to show something to themselves and to the world and create this engagement site. And each piece can have that sort of engaging opportunity for people.
Now, I found this absolutely amazing, and I studied weaving, and I did some installations with weaving, but this to me is on a whole different level, because when you look at the paintings, you really don't know that it's done this way. And I have to say, that's one of the reasons I love it so much. He also does sculpture, and the sculpture's in the middle of the gallery. I was there with the director of the gallery, and I told the director that I wish that the sculpture, that it was a bigger gallery, because the sculptures are somewhat distracting when you look at the paintings. And do I think they look like modernist paintings? Definitely. There's something very lyrical about them. His use of color is beautiful, and I don't know if you understand what he's doing. He's weaving all these things and then sometimes cutting them and putting them in. So sometimes they're more collage-like, and sometimes they're still on the same loom. But if you look at the sculpture in front, you can see the way his mind is working about seeing how you break down space. Like, I love this one. Can you go back, Sherelle? I love that one this one on the right. It feels like that black moves all the way back. It feels like you have real sense of dimension. And he feels like he's building a city, or he's feeling like he's building a space. Just very, very, very impressive. And I like that, he didn't think he was going to stay doing weaving, but that's what the art told him to do. And I think that is very powerful as well, when you let the art be your guide, that there's not really a one way, you don't come into the world and say, oh, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. But right after this person, we're going to see de Kooning, and you'll see how much de Kooning changes. Now let's look at the individual pieces. Now these are just so beautiful. Look at that piece. That is one of my, that little slice of red is so beautiful. And here, by the way, I think the frames work beautifully. Really, really beautiful. And this again reminds me so much of the modernist painters and sculptors. That is my favorite piece in the show. And this reminds me so much of the first artist that we saw. And it has this, it almost feels like there's a narrative in there. It's
Toby?
Beautiful with jazz.
There's a question if you know how he dyes the threads, or does he dye them, or does he purchase them?
He purchased them. Very different than the first artist. I looked in the thing. The first artist in the video, you would see them sticking. The collective sticks that material into a bucket and dyes it. These he buys dyes. You saw those huge amount of spools of a single color, and it's done in a dye lot. He buys it that way. It's basically most paintings are either done on oil, cotton or linen, and these are cotton, and he buys spools of cotton, and actually what he's doing is he's making the canvas. But if you look at them, they're so beautiful up close. I don't know if Sherelle, can you move it up all the way so they can see? You can see the warp and the weft, and in most cotton duck, it's not that clear. And if you see the way the paint is, yeah, look at that. You can see where the slices are. You see that? You can see, thank you, Sherelle, you're the nicest. You see that right now? And then, I don't know if you know who Gordon Matta Clark is. Gordon Matta Clark did collages very much like this. But can you see the lines now? And I think those lines add a lot. Like that teeny tint of red. Do you see that on right behind the gray on the right? No, that is a big amount of gray. Look up a little. There's a little gray. No, down. Gray. Now go to the gray to the right. There's a teeny, there it is. I think that is exquisite. That really does something to me because it feels like this total control. And I like that the colors have different pieces of material that are collaged together. And I'm happy, thank you, Sherelle, for going up close, because I don't think you could have noticed that had we not done that. I'm watching my clock. I'm being very well behaved. I'd love to spend more time here, but let's just zoom through the rest of these so we can go to de Kooning. I think there's another. Yeah, that one is beautiful. I love, go back one. That is a beautiful sculpture. Just beautiful, very lyrical. It feels like almost it's floating. All right, let's keep going. All right, now we're going to de Kooning. This is with Gagosian Gallery, not my favorite gallery in the world, but when Gagosian does a show, oh my God, does he do a great show. So we're going to see de Kooning's work, and the show is one of the best installations I've ever seen, and that is on until June 14th.
Can you see my screen, Toby?
Yes, I can.
My name is Judith Siltzer. I'm curator emerita of the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden and an independent historian. I began working on the art of de Kooning probably more than 30 years ago, and it was his late work that drew me into studying his entire career. I was also extremely fortunate to have the cooperation, goodwill, and guidance of the Willem de Kooning Foundation. I cannot imagine anyone undertaking a study of de Kooning's work without using the resources of the de Kooning Foundation. The format of the book allows not only for full-page color reproductions, but for placing them on the page with great tact and skills so that each work of art can get something of the impact of the original. It is, if you will, a biography of de Kooning's art. The chapters follow decade by decade, de Kooning's development as an artist. And the first chapter is called Seeking a Way, about how de Kooning was searching for a way to live his life by being an artist. And part of that search led him to leave his native land, the Netherlands, and come to the United States. It was only after his experience working briefly for barely a year on the federal art projects of the New Deal during the Depression that he developed the courage and the conviction that he could be a full-time artist. The second chapter is called Painting as Living and chronicles his development primarily in the 1940s. He began to develop his own artistic voice and painted some of the most beautiful abstract paintings. The third chapter is called Working for Himself, and that is a paraphrase of a statement de Kooning made that artists, they work to satisfy themselves rather than critics or patrons. The fourth chapter is called Starting Over, and it begins in 1963, having been identified as an urban painter. De Kooning turned instead to the landscape of the East End of Long Island, which is flat and by the seaside, very much like his native Netherlands. Finally, the fifth chapter is called Looking Back, and it deals with the final decade of de Kooning's production in the 1980s. In the late works, he distills all of his painting knowledge into these beautiful lyrical arabesques in which line becomes the thread that holds each of the compositions together. Much of the significant literature on de Kooning has been exhibition catalogs. So it is very difficult in an exhibition catalog to present a complete narrative of an artist's life and work. His devotion to art as a way of life is really a very romantic notion, and he, I feel, embodies the bohemian ideal of art and life as one.
So before we get started, I want to talk about something very important. And that is, she is not talking about the fact that the last decade of his life he had Alzheimer's. For many years, I don't know if you know this, but I have to tell you this because I believe in truth in advertising. Everyone agrees he had some form of dementia or Alzheimer's the last 10 years of his life. And some very famous critics said you shouldn't look at that work because he really wasn't in command of himself. I disagree with that, always disagreed with that, because I've known people who have Alzheimer's and memory loss, and there's certain parts of them that have stayed very clear. The reason I'm so in love with this exhibition is that, and I have to give credit to whoever did the installation. I'm sure it was a great historian. They didn't put the work in different rooms. They put all the work so you go back and forth and you see 30 and that I love this. You walk into the gallery, this is what you see. So early work on the left, very late work, and then middle work when he starts being in the Hamptons. And it's just breathtaking. And you realize that the artist kept similar colors through his entire career. Also, the sculptures that are in the show, many dealers did not want to show his sculptures. And there's a very great story about the gallery named Matthew Marks. He did the same thing with three very famous artists. One was de Kooning. Nobody wanted to show de Kooning's sculptures. And he said to de Kooning, let me show your sculptures. And now those sculptures are very important. The second artist was Ellsworth Kelly, who loved doing his flower paintings, but everyone wanted his big abstractions. And he did these beautiful flower paintings. And Matthew Mark said, let me show those. And the third is Bryce Martin. Many people didn't want to show the pieces he did of rubbings of tombstones and work that he did on marble. And he told all three of them, let me do this, let me do this. And they all eventually let him become their dealers. So I think that's an important thing. So now let's just, I feel like crying. So that's a huge, like a 20-foot sculpture. And look at that sculpture in relationship to the painting, the two paintings in the other room. So you're walking in there, you feel like you're entering a museum. All the way on the back wall is one of the first Hamptons paintings that are in the show. So here is, they changed the walls, and that is one of the reasons some people don't like Gagosian, but I admire him for doing exhibitions that are just breathtaking. Why will a gallery do something like that? Because if you have a de Kooning to sell, you might go to him instead of putting it up to auction. So he's not being exotic to do this show. But it's so beautiful. Look at that. It feels like two dancing figures. They feel like they could be figures or animals, and the embrace and the movement and the fluidity is just beautiful. And on the back walls, you see two of the late paintings.
Toby, do you know what material this sculpture is?
Bronze. It's bronze. All his look at that. So that is a 15 or 20 year space in between. I just love them both. Now the middle one does remind me a little of Diebenkorn. They did it at the same as time. It looks like it feels very much like you're at the beach, but the two on the sides, and let me tell you, because I know people that worked for him, they would set up the colors on his easel and on his little palette, but nobody touched his paintings. He did all his own painting. I know somebody, in fact, he warmed up by painting on the New York Times. And there was a very famous dealer who did this, and I love the story. He would paint these figures on like 10 pages of the New York Times, and the paint would seep through. This dealer bought the New York Times, with the 10 pieces, and then separated them and sold them as 10 monoprints. Like, he separated clinically the pieces. I think that's such a funny story. So these are the famous sculptures that nobody wanted to show. They look like potato eaters or clam diggers. I think they were called I'm not sure the name. I think it was clam diggers. But look at that beautiful painting in the background, and you see a 25-year-old space between the painting on the right and the painting on the left. I wish you could see this in person. Now you'll see that. So I did my undergraduate, go back one. I did my undergraduate thesis on these paintings. So I was in graduate school in the 70s, and I did a series. My two masters and my two undergraduate degrees were on how de Kooning painted the woman body. You can see there's a woman in there. And I also did it on Dubuffet, how he did the figure. But very, very beautiful work. And that's in 1958, and that's in 69. Look at how much they changed. Go back, and go back one. That's this is called Suburb in Havana. And the next one done is in Montauk. And you can see the colors really, really change. And this is late in his life. This is, soon before he dies, when he definitely has memory loss, but they look very lyrical. Some people like these the most. Who can see the message? I'm now looking, I'm trying to look. Oh, somebody said good choice, thank you. But you can see how different the work looks. So I'd love to hear what you guys think before we go to the next show. I'm dying to know, can a few people write, do they like the earlier work, later work? Do you find the show interesting? Talk to me a little about this, because this is a real historical show. How, do most of you know de Kooning? That's another good question. Anyone have anything to say? Later work by far. Wow, I agree, Brooke. I do too. I think the early work is very angry. Oh, I like the sculptures. Jerry, I'm so happy to hear that. I have to be honest with you. I do too. Most people don't. And you like it all together. I think the 4 periods are marvelous. She's a really bright person. That's why I picked that video. Can I say another thing? I worked very hard to pick the right videos. There are hundreds of videos on him. I wanted to, we can talk about what dementia does to art, which is a different brain effect. Yeah, you know what? By the way, Jeffrey, thank you for saying that. There's a study been done how music, and my father-in-law was chief of medicine of Toronto Western, and late in his life when he couldn't recognize anyone anymore, when his daughters, my wife and her sisters, came by and they sang with him, he would move his hand, and he loved music. So yes, I do think those are very different. And that, I have to be honest, is one of the reasons I find his late work so interesting. Oliver Sacks wrote about this subject. You are correct. Good. I'm happy this conversation got going. I love the early works dealing with what yes. So he was not the easiest man, but he did love the woman's body. Okay, I'm very excited that we had that going. All right, let's go to the next exhibition now. So this is another show I'm in love with. Let me talk about this for a minute. This is a show of 2 very important artists. And this is the most historic show up right now. And the people who live in New York, I strongly suggest you go to that because it's not a chic show to go to. And I don't think, it hasn't been reviewed in the Times yet. And this is Klaus Oldenburg when he was young and Peter Moore when he was young. Klaus Oldenburg later in his life worked with his wife, who was a great artist too, and they did it together. And Peter Moores died early, and his wife has kept up the gauntlet to show you his work. So I think this is a brilliant exhibition. Let's go to these 2 videos.
I do believe in making art and then sending it out into the world. And then I miss it. I don't see it for many years. And then something like this happens and it all comes back. It's pleased me very much to see it. And I hope it's pleased other people too.
So this exhibition celebrates a moment in New York City 50 years ago when Klaus Oldenburg, as a young artist, began to make these 2 absolute landmarks of modern art. It didn't have any less grand ambitions than, say, the work of the abstract expressionists before him, but it wanted to connect to people.
The work that I did when I first arrived in New York, which was connected with the street, and that grew out of my surroundings as I was living on the Lower East Side. And I was forced to make things out of cardboard and things I would find on the street. The store as well is made out of plaster and enamel that you buy in a hardware store. So I was making these works with a high intention, but I was making them out of low materials.
Given what has happened in the half century since these were made, what younger artists have done since then that absolutely could not have been done if he hadn't had made these first, I think what we have that's a little different is a sense of the seriousness at the same time that it's so playful.
There's always new ways to discover form and beauty. When you have found those new ways, people don't at first see it, but they get used to it. And I think that's what's happened to this show. I think people are much more likely now to respond to this show than they were when they first saw it.
to seeing the other video.
Sponsored. Standing second from the right, the person against the wall, the man in the glasses, is David Heath, a photographer. And there are other people I can sometimes pick out of this and identify, but I can't see from here. The hall was exactly what its name describes. On Sundays, anyone could post anything about any issue on the wall of a room in the church basement, and on Wednesdays, the contents of the wall would be discussed. Discussion was loosely defined so that it might include even a performance, such as Peter Schumann's Totentanz or Death Dance. Schumann was a German sculptor who came to the United States in 1961. His Totentanz was a powerful expressionistic dance with music performed by 7 masked performers. The papier-mâché masks on the performers, on the human performers, the ritualistic form and raucous percussive music became hallmarks of Schumann's bread and puppet theater, which Peter Moore continued to document for the next 30 years. The first Judson Dance Theater performance Peter and I saw was Concert of Dance No. 4 in January 1963. I'm going to reference that with only one photograph here. As I told you before, I would just briefly touch on these things. This is from Tricia Brown's Lightfall with her and Steve Paxton. Peter's more iconic photograph of this dance that you may be thinking about shows Tricia sitting on Steve's back, but I've chosen this one because it shows the whole audience in the repurposed Judson Gym where the earliest dance theater performances took place. 4 days later, we were introduced to another choreographer working in a more flamboyant style. James Waring was not a participant in the workshop that spawned Judson Dance Theater, but his spirit was ever present. His company at that time included Valda Setterfield, David Gordon, Yvonne Rayner, Eileen Pasloff, Deborah Hay, and Arlene Rothlein, among others, all of them leading lights at Judson. Jimmy created both ballets and more experimental works, and one of his greatest virtues was an openness to everything everyone else was involved in. His eclectic interests introduced many of his students and colleagues to each other. Yvonne, here doing something funny with a ribbon that's unwinding from Valda, has said she learned a lot from him. And here is a group simultaneously dancing and blowing on party whistles that unfurl, you know, the kind you have in New Year's, in a piece called at Hallelujah Gardens. Among the most politically engaged artists at this time were Julian Beck and Judith Malina, founders of the Living Theater. Here they are discussing revolution at a place called the Center. And this is Julian, and this is Judith, and this is still 63. In the early 1960s, smaller, more personal art and art with populist subjects was being made in direct reaction against the macho aggressiveness of abstract expressionism. Similarly, Judson dancers discarded the histrionics of Martha Graham and other modern dancers in favor of lower-key quotidian movement. The avant-garde was, however, united more by what it was against than what it was for, and eventually schisms occurred. These images precede that. Everybody attended and participated in everyone else's performances. There was no New York Fluxus yet. That movement first surfaced with Americans in Europe in 1962-63. There were events in New York that might be considered proto-Fluxus, but with a broadly based pool of participants and audience. One such major event was the Yam Festival that took place throughout the month of May, and of course, Yam is May spelled backwards, May 1963. A weekend of YAM events took place at the Hardware Poets Playhouse right here, so called because it was above a hardware store on West 54th Street. On May 11th, more than 24 hours of activities called YAM Day epitomized the eclectic overall nature of the festival. This is what a typical audience looked like. I show this as an indication not just of the general ambiance, but of the crossover attraction within the avant-garde community. Over on the right is Dick Higgins, the guy in the foreground there, most often associated with Fluxus. On the far left, wearing sunglasses, I think, yeah, you can see him over there, the end of the row. That's Andy Warhol, the quintessential pop artist who always skirted the dividing line.
So then she gets into, you can watch it later. This is Peter Moore's wife, and she talks about the importance of the exhibitions that they work on together. The reason I wanted you to see this is I want you to understand that during the 60s, it was not only abstract expressionism. This is one of the most exciting shows I could ever take anyone to. I've been there at least 11 times since it opened. And let's go to see the show. It's because it's not about commerce. It's about two young artists coming to New York and being on the street and showing you. The photographs are hysterical. You know, some of them blow up. You see, it says, like that, 79 cents. And then you see the photographs in the wall. So that is the drawings of Klaus Oldenburg next to Peter Moore's photographs. But if you go up close to the photographs, you'll really laugh because sometimes it says, you know, prices for things. But let's go to another one, which I want to show you where you'll really laugh. Go to the net, keep going. These are just beautiful also. This one, below, let's see, I think we have individual pieces too. You'll see that they have like selling gold and, you know, what the things, the erasers, Klaus Oldenburg, you know, what they found interesting in the street and the juxtapositioning. Oh, that's a funny one. Make that one big. You can see that. No, the drawings are very cute. They look like, and look at this. The gates of hell, no one under 17 admitted. Like he would just play with you and they would both be looking at things on the street. This is, oh, go make this one big. That's a very funny one too. You know what it says on the cards. Don't tailgate, exterminate. You know what I mean? Like they play aggressive glass, you know, glass and mirrors. He would play with what he saw on the street. And this is really way before graffiti was graffiti. It is one of the most exciting shows I can ever show you. I'm honored to have taken you to it. It's not a standard show to go to. And I think it's important to know about the living theater. Yeah, these go down. That's great. When you see individual pieces, it's just it's just beautiful. And I don't know how many of you know who he was as a photographer. I knew about him because he was Peter Moore was friendly with Roy de Carava, who was my teacher. And look at, yeah, that's a very funny one. Can you make that one much larger? The photograph, go a little bigger. Can you see that any bigger? What it says on there, I think it's lovable. I mean, he takes pictures. When you see in buildings, sometimes you'll have two different companies in the same building and he'd pick images that made you really surprised at what you were looking at. I hope you get to see this exhibition. I want to try one more show. I know we only have 7 minutes. I want to leave some time for opening, but I think it's important to know about what the live-in theater was. I saw that many of you knew. It reminds me, somebody said of Wayne Thiebaud. I love that too. Can we try one more show, Sherelle, or am I going to get into trouble?
We do have a few questions.
Oh, I love questions. Okay.
So yeah. It's either show or questions.
Questions. I love dialogue. You can see the rest of them on your own. They're really good exhibitions. Go ahead. Let's go for
And I'll
questions.
include the other exhibitions in the follow-up email, the ones that we couldn't get to see.
Great.
One question was about the materials used by Ethan Cook in his sculptures.
Ethan Cook's sculptures are metal.
Okay.
I think they're aluminum. I'm not positive. Or stainless steel. I think they're stainless steel. It's either aluminum or stainless steel.
Another question was, when you go and see art, do you go and see many exhibitions in a series? And what do you think about like seeing just one or seeing many? How do you recommend to see that?
It depends who you are. Like I'm a bit neurotic, or I love seeing many shows. But when I do these lectures, I spend a lot of time planning what will be next to something else and what I'm trying to teach in that day. When I go for myself, I'll be brutally honest. If I'm not teaching, I don't go to see anything. I'm in my studio 6 days a week. So I'm very committed to doing a great job. One of the classes I teach is about visual thinking, and therefore I go to many galleries. When I take a group, next week I'm taking a group of 20 artists, and then I pick a neighborhood and I find out what those artists are interested in. Are they more interested in photography or printmaking or painting? So I do this in a very different way. For this class, for you guys, you are my favorite group to teach to because you're such a broad group of people. I try and do a theme. It's always about a theme.
Another question was going back to the first artist we saw, Claudia Alarcon, and there were quite a few questions about the payment to the group of women that create the art, and is that conversation part of the exhibition? Is there information about
it? It is not, but it says that she pays them. But you should know, many people ask me that, and I want you to think about other artists like Elena Tsui. He has hundreds of people working for him. It's a different way. You have to understand, if these people were not working for her, she's paying them much more they could possibly make doing anything else. So I don't want anyone to feel that they're getting, a bad deal. They're getting a very good deal. It's a different way to spend one's life.
Maybe it's a good last question that we have here. If you can expand a little on what you understand to be the theme for today, or what connects these different exhibitions, and if when you go through the exhibitions that are during a specific time in New York, do you feel that the galleries are influenced by each other and that the theme emerges, or are you kind of picking and choosing to create one?
Right, so first of all, most galleries don't talk to each other because they keep things close to themselves. Some do, but many don't. I'm the one who's putting it together. I go to see shows and then I go, wow, so many shows right now are about textile. So that's one of the things I want to do. Sometimes I'm very conscious of trying to show diversity. I will almost never show all living artists or all dead artists or all male artists or all female artists, or I'm very committed to not only Americans. I try and include people from very different backgrounds. I'm always happy when I find a Jewish artist who I love. I'm looking for diversity, and I try very hard. I pick what I think is the best. But since there are many bests, as I heard from a friend of mine who was on the committee for Yale Art School, that you could fill up the room 20 times with the same group of talented people. I'm trying to show a diverse audience. So it is definitely part of my thinking to show superstars, not stars, older people, younger people, dead people, living people. But it's all of, I will never show everyone from one ethnic background or one age group. I do try very hard to only show people who I think are really gifted.
One last question. Do you have any thoughts about why textile art has become so trendy and fashionable in the art world lately?
I'm thrilled about it. The reason I think is everything is up for grabs now. I think people are realizing that art is about thinking out loud. It's just like painting and sculpture and photography. I think the community room has grown bigger. I'm happy. You know, there's a very famous quote by John Chamberlain. I was at an award ceremony that he got from the Sculpture Center about being one of the great sculptors, and he said he remembers hearing from Barnett Newman. I heard him say this. Barnett Newman once said to him, you know what sculpture is? Sculpture is the thing that you bump into and you can stand far enough back to look at a painting. I think that is so funny, and I can't ever forget that. But I deeply believe art should be everything, and I'm thrilled, not happy, thrilled that so many different types of art forms are being shown. I try very hard to include everything.
Tobi, thank you so much for this wonderful journey through the New York art scene. Thank you.
Thank you for so many people staying on. I know that it's usually an hour, and I'm always scared I'll lose everyone by the last 15 minutes. And I like that 3/4 of the people are still here.